Right. So this conversation now on makers, we're looking into a couple of things: REST and HTTP versus HTTPS. I'm joined today with Reiko. Um, I'm Diego. So my role here today is that of the maker. This is part of a series. So if you're watching just this video, you might want to go back. There's a playlist and you can watch the others one. We're building on top of that conversation. So Ray, we've talked about APIs, we've talked about contracts, talked about JSON and different formats. I think one of the things that I hear all the time, though, even though I do have a technical background, I've done some of these things, is REST. So I'd love to hear from you, because I heard this from you multiple times as well. What is REST, and really kind of why should I care as as a maker here?
Yeah, I think there are going to be better videos to watch in terms of going on the full like history of REST and the way it actually is represented. What I'm just going to do is, in the context of okay, if I stop moving this around, of the series that we've talked about, the other calls that you and I have had, trying to help you understand some of the stuff we've gone through, from our API to JSON to now we're here. REST in the context of what we're trying to build out is a way to have a common language between the two of us beyond just our contract to say, hey, if you send me a request using, this particular type of request, again, I'll understand it and I'll process it in a guaranteed fashion and provide you with a result or an answer in a guaranteed way. The other thing too is you mentioned as we go along through this, this will be wrapped around a protocol called HTTP or Hypertext Transport Protocol, and then there's a secure version of that or HTTPS that we should always be doing all the time on the internet. So let's get started with REST. So REST, REST, is like all the other things we've had so far in our series of learning. So in the first step, we learned about API, and the second one, we learned about JSON. And in this one, 3, we're going to learn about REST. And REST is yet another acronym that stands for, we'll do the video, the whiteboard here. RE will stand for representational. S in REST is for state, and T is for transfer. Okay. So basically, what this means is we're gonna have a way for you to describe what you want to do. We mentioned endpoints in this format, right? If you want to get information about users, right? There is a particular verbiage that you can say, hey, I want this information, right? I want to get information from you. So this is going to be part of the idea of REST. Okay. So let me try to explain that in better detail. Let's go down here in this whiteboard. So I want to redraw something for a sec. I talked about in the very first video the idea of an API. So we have the concept of our app here. And in this app, I said I exposed some endpoints. Okay, so let's just start with 3 for now. And then this represents our API view 1. And each of these endpoints will require you to communicate to me in a fairly specific fashion. Right? So if I want to call this endpoint, first of all, I need to know how to reach it, right? We mentioned HTTP, HTTPS. What the internet works on is websites. And so this, even though it's not like a website you'd normally go to and bring up in your browser and I can see pictures and stuff like that, this is just like a machine readable website or backend. And so the expectation is that you're just sending me pure data. So what we talked about before is JSON. Okay, so these represent it with an ellipsis and these curly braces. So this represents some form of data. So you're going to send it to me, and I want to hit this endpoint. And this endpoint is, let's call it that write endpoint that we talked about in the first video. And it's for a specific type of information, right? Maybe information about our user. Great. Because it's write, and I have a user endpoint, I will call it represented with a slash. You need to tell me that, in fact, you're trying to write data, not get data from me, right? You want to save this, you want to persist it. So what you will do as part of your call to my backend is not only will you locate, mywebsite.com/users, right, in your call to my backend. You're also going to provide a verb, and the verb can be one of many. In this case, here, this verb will be a post verb, POST. And with that, the idea is I want to create a new user. I want to create a new user. Post is a reserved verb typically for creating new things as a request. Again, in this case, we're going to create a new user. And so we're going to do that by passing data of some sort, structured data of some kind that I understand. And you're going to have this verb post. And then this combination of a specific endpoint and a specific verb, right, will represent a RESTful request, right? There are arguments about what would constitute RESTful. So in this case, I said user. In some cases in documentations, there's arguments that it should be users with an S, right? It goes on and on. But basically, this is the gist of it. It's going to be a very specific endpoint that I call with a specific verb.
I like this. I mean, I'm actually pretty curious about some of this stuff too, Ray. But when you say so, let's talk about this verb here. Post. I mean, where is this coming from? Like, is this like related to my API now? Like, where do I see other verbs? Just so I understand.
Yeah, this is actually part of the HTTP protocol, right? So
Okay.
I mentioned before, hypertext transfer protocol, and then you'll see in documentations like a /s. Really, the base of it comes from this HTTP base standard. And so in HTTP, there are a couple of main verbs, right? There's, as I mentioned, post, which is for creating new resources. There's the get verb for retrieving information from a
that's what's
backend.
come from. Yeah, I'm familiar with like get. I mean, I've done a lot of like requests with like get. Okay.
Yeah, I get that a lot. There's also like put requests, a put, and then there's a delete.
Got it.
Right. And I think there might be one more. I'm having one of those moments.
I have like an info, I think.
Yeah.
If I'm not wrong here, but no. So I see like this is how it ties together. I think. I mean, again, like I've used some of this. For I'm familiar with some of this, but this is how it ties together. Then.
Yeah.
So the whole conversation about HTTP CPS, I transport, I'm doing my calls from like, Power Apps or whatever else I'm using it. In our case, Power Apps. Then my payload is gonna come off out of that as JSON, and it's gonna hit one of your like endpoints in a specific version, right? That's what we have here. Okay, so that kind of makes sense to me now. I mean, this is how I would use, JSON, specific APIs, the contracts, HTTP, HTTPS, and then having REST.
Yeah. And on a note in terms of sorry, before tying that off, not to overload you with information, but these verbs, right? Like they will all, like if I wanted this to act all on, I think my pen doesn't want to work right now. Users, right? Information about a user or users. Each, like I would call the same, from if it was in a browser, it looks like the same endpoint, right? But depending on which verb I pass, the result I get will be different, right? Like I can't create a new user if I call the user endpoint, but provide you the get verb or method, right?
Got it. Okay.
So it's a combination of these things. So it allows me to basically use the same endpoint to do multiple different things in there. And then you also brought up a good phrase or common term, the idea of a payload, right? Payload in essence is just data, like the data thing that the package that you're trying to send me, right? So that's what I wanted.
Okay, the one, I mean, again, this makes clear, I think, what, little journey here that we have between our Power App application and then hitting this, backend. I think we keep referring to that as like a backend or an API. In the future here, though, what I think we want to discuss, what I would love to hear from you in a different video is, this also looks interesting. I'm sure there is security authentication. I can see that coming. I don't know where and how. But maybe in a future video here, we'll tackle some of the topics around just like authentication and how we can do that.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good.
All right. So this wraps up for this one. Thank you for staying with us. Until next time.
Yeah.